Right. Right. Hello, everybody. Good morning. Welcome to another Standards Committee. Another Prime Minister and a new monarch. So yes, lots has happened in that time. So it's very good to see you all. And we have a jam-packed agenda. So the monitoring officer tells me, or possibly not, but that's probably a good thing. I did, as promised, supply us with some sandwiches for after with a few crisps. Not sure we've got any plates at the moment, so it's hands on deck, and accommodated your dietary needs. But you never told me what you wanted inside the sandwich, so I went potluck on that one. So you never told me what. Well, I didn't ask you what you wanted inside the gluten-free bread, so I'm hoping what I chose is going to be suitable. So do all please stay on after for a sandwich or two. Don't have too many, Mick. Right, on we go to the agenda. Apologies for absence, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I can give apologies this morning from Councillor Joe Henderson.
Thank you very much. The minutes of the last meeting outlined on pages 1 to 12. For those of you that were here, are we in agreement that they represent a true picture of what was said and done? Got a proposer on my right, Mr. Casey, Gina, or go for Gina. Councillor Placey as a seconder. All those in favour? Thank you very much. Declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest today, please? Okie dokie, I'm not seeing any, so we'll move on to item number 4. It's going to be breakfast rather than lunch, isn't it, at this rate? Questions on notice pursuant to Council Procedure Rule 38. I'll look to my left.
None received, Chairman.
Thank you very much. We have now a report of the monitoring officer, which is a review of the monitoring officer protocol, pages 13 to 50 of your agenda pack, and I will ask Lisa Hastings, the monitoring officer, to give us an update there.
Thank you, Chairman, members of the committee and independent persons. This protocol, if I just set out some background, when Pendring District Council reviewed its standards arrangements back in 2013, one of the documents which was presented in that package so that the members, elected members and members of the public could have some reassurances of the way that the role the monitoring officer will be undertaken in accordance with the standards complaints procedure. The Standards Committee did delegate some powers and functions to the monitoring officer to undertake, so the document was produced to show how those functions would be carried out. Since it's been adopted, it's been reviewed once previously. Amendments to it were suggested. The document is approved by full council. So if the committee were minded to suggest any amendments to the document, then they would go as recommendations from this committee back to full council for full council to consider and approve for adoption. So the monitoring officer protocol sits alongside an independent person protocol as well as to how they will conduct the role, and also the members' complaints procedure. All 3 documents are approved by full council. Having given it a fresh review and a read through, it was considered actually that just some small sections of the complaints procedure might be worth including within the monitoring officer protocol, just to give members subject to the complaints or members of the public making the complaints as to what is taken into account by the monitoring officer when they make a decision and the process they go through. So on page 14 of, it actually starts on the bottom of page 13 of your agenda. The complaints procedure, which is, as I said, is adopted by full council, actually lists the factors that the monitoring officer may take into account. So it starts at the bottom of 13, goes over to 14, and they're quite important bullet points. They're quite important factors that are taken into account. The complaints procedure also sets out the 3 decisions that the MO can make when a complaint is received. They are very restrictive, and they're set out in the middle of page 14, and that is merits no further action, merits early informal resolution or mediation, merits further investigation. So I think it's quite important to maybe highlight in the MO protocol, which it doesn't at the moment, that the monitoring officer would not be making a decision or undertaking an investigation at that stage. It would be, you know, the decision is limited to those 3 things. The protocol also maybe could do with reference to the fact that there is an assessment criteria which is set out in Annex D to the complaints procedure. So that is maybe worth putting that in. And also that there is no right of appeal. However, an individual can go to the local government social care ombudsman if they wish to complain about the decision. So it was sort of felt that although that information is already contained in other documents and it's not new, and it doesn't in any way, shape or form amend the actual process, if you was only going to look at the protocol, it would be, I feel, a bit more robust with regards to its content. The other things, well, just 2 sort of slight changes is that we also would recommend that the legislation is updated in the protocol, and that's suggested at the bottom of page 14. I will say that I do, as the council's monitoring officer, have delegated powers from full council to make amendments to documents where there's a sort of change of best practice or a change of legislation. But I have felt in this instance, because the protocol is about the way that I do the job, it didn't feel quite right to then exercise those delegated powers. So I felt that, you know, in the spirit of being completely open and transparent, I've suggested that the committee make those recommendations to full council. So in your pack, you have been provided with the current monitoring of the protocol, the complaints procedure, independent person protocol as well, and terms of reference to the standards committee. So you had a complete picture of all the documents together. So if you feel that as officers we've not picked up any other changes that could go in there, or even through your experiences, then, you know, happy to take those on regards to debate through the committee today.
Thank you very much. It's an opportunity then for anyone to comment, should they wish. Any comments? Yes, please, Graham.
Could we just discuss the role of town councils, because you've made reference to the town council and that Tenrig is not the legal advisor. So how would that work then? Because would the town clerks be in a position to be like the monitoring officer for the town councils, negating the need to come to yourself?
So, as the district council's monitoring officer, there's various aspects to my role. So, the role of the monitoring officer came about through the Local Government Housing Act 1989, and it requires the monitoring officer to report to Cabinet or to full council if there's any sort of omissions in decision making which makes those decisions unlawful. Right? So that is one of the functions of the council's monitoring officer. That's regarded, it's a term you might hear, as one of the district council's statutory officers, head of paid service, chief exec being one, section 151, head of finance being the other. So those three roles are statutory officers. So that part of the monitoring officer does not apply to town and parish councils. The role of the monitoring officer for town and parish councils is limited to the standards framework, which means that under the Localism Act 2011, when a complaint is received about a town and parish councillor, it has to go to the district council's monitoring officer to deal with. So my role is limited to town and parish councils to deal with member code of conduct complaints. So at tendering, I would do lots of different things, but for town and parish councils, that's like the sort of limitation on my role. So when I do, when we've had complaints about town and parish councils, I might give a view on how things could be improved with regards to their governance procedures, but I'm only really doing that to help. You know, I can't enforce that at all, and you know, like I can here. So it's a bit different. And what tends to happen, Councillor Steady, is that some town and parish councils, so town and parish councils should make sure they've got their own legal advice, they've got their own financial advice, their own sort of probity governance advice, and normally those roles are picked up by either the clerk to the parish council, or they'll get additional resources in to provide that. So, you know, I do have quite a good relationship with sort of the majority of the clerks in the district. We signpost each other to useful bits of information, but that's really what we're doing in that regard. So for code of conduct complaints at town and parish council level cannot be dealt with by town and parish councils clerks. Legislation says they have to come here. But everything else they're more than welcome to do.
Any other comments, please? Yes, Councillor Casey, please.
This is for you, Lisa. I've spent the last 18 months pillaged, thief and everything, rounded around this house, etc., running into your office, executive office. At last meeting, David, they actually blatantly stated it. I took it to the police station. We had their collar felts, vigils. They come in here. Surely there must be a procedure, something into you to write in. They shouldn't be running in and out of you with different doing. Blatantly saying what they're actually doing there. Every one of them has been enough of telling me for the and etc. It's just gone on enough. When are we going to stop that? Surely we are professional bodies. If somebody comes with a complaint, you ask, email, dealt with that way. Don't run around every time there's a meeting, they're running over it, the same little group. Every one of those group now is at their collar, basically. So I think it's time that tendering councils do come into it. And they go away. Just the last 18 months, that's just taken and stolen. Just had enough of it.
So, Councillor Casey, in these public meetings and even between members, do not sort of share details of individual complaints. The one thing I will say is, though, that I never ever accept a complaint unless it's in writing. It has to be submitted on the formal complaint form. It comes to me. If there is not enough information in the complaint form, we write back to the complainant and we ask them for more information. If a complaint is accepted by the monitoring officer to deal with, the councillor who is the subject of that complaint is immediately informed. So if a bona fide complaint has been received, a councillor is advised. If there is no, quite often happens is that somebody will want to complain about a councillor. We signpost them to where they need to go to and what they need to present. They don't come forward again. We don't hear from them again. Now, what they then do after that, we can't control because that's down to the individuals. If there had been a complaint made against yourself or any other councillors in the district or town and parish council, and I was involved with it, you would know. If you don't know, it means it's not progressing. So, you know, I have obviously limited ability to, you know, control what the public or other groups say. With the particular issue you are referring to, the chief executive wrote to a number of individuals and a number of organisations and said, we tendering are not dealing with this. So there were references made to things that were going on that the council was allegedly supposed to be doing, and we wrote out and we said that was not the case. That's
still quotes councils, etc. They're like, basically, whatever you've said to them, being called crooks as well.
Any other questions? Comments? Points? Recommendation then that the committee review the monitoring officer's protocol and determine whether they agree with suggested proposed amendments to that protocol as set out in the report and or any additional changes through their debate. Consideration by full council. So steady.
Not passing the buck at all, but obviously the monitoring officer is the main person with the protocol and bringing recommendations for. So the $64 question is, are you quite happy with the infrastructure we've got in place to help you do?
Thank you, Councillor Steady. I'd have to say that although I suppose, you know, our name's above the door when it comes to being the monitoring officer, I have a very good and very supportive team around me within the council. Last year, the head of paid service chief exec put into the staffing restructure a new post as well, which was Karen Townsend's role, you know, to help even more. So I feel that I've got, you know, a lot of support internally as well, and I also feel that I get support from councillors and district and town and parish councils and clerks across the area. So I am happy. You do have to have a very thick skin at times. But I genuinely believe that we have, when it comes to integrity and a robust procedure which is open and transparent, the fact that you get quarterly updates or updates that come to each of these committees on what's been happening, I sort of feel as well that you receive all the information that you can do. So yeah, I feel that what's being suggested in here is just tweaks to an existing procedure which is working fairly.
And whilst taking Anne's comments on board, obviously there are awkward. Long way. I think we can make some comments.
Yeah, it's an excellently put point, actually, Councillor Steady. Couldn't have said it better myself. So yes, indeed, we will that as an add-on at the end. So just to be very clear, there is some text as the monitoring officer outlined on starting on page 13, 14, which is we are recommending is considered and proposed as an amendment to full council. Is that correct? Is everybody clear about that? Okay. I will then ask for a proposer for that, please. Councillor Guglielmi, seconder, please. Councillor Skills, all those in favour, please. That's carried then, and we'll go through to full council. And if it could just be noted that we'd like to give thanks to the way in which the monitoring officer conducts herself, very well behaved. And as well as the team who support her, thank them for what they do. Yes, Councillor Guglielmi.
Is this made worse by everybody going phones and it made worse?
We did have a run of complaints that were social media related. I think that this year hasn't been too bad with regards to social media. I would probably say a couple of years ago it was worse with regards to social media, although I am aware that some town and parish areas, councils, are seeing an increase use of social media, maybe not being appropriate, but I've not had complaints come forward in that regard. I will say that you tend to find that, I'm sort of anticipating that more complaints will be received over the next few months because it's run up to election time, and it happens every single time that more complaints are received. That doesn't mean that they're genuine complaints. It just means that you get more inquiries as well. As a district council, we issued social media guidance, which I think has been received quite well by district councillors. We did also circulate that, I think, to town and parish councils. Some adopted it and some haven't. There is one of the things I think that the public do struggle with is if a councillor is on social media and they're doing it as their personal capacity, members of the public will always see them as a councillor, even though they're not acting as a councillor. And councillors are entitled to a private life. You are, but the public struggle with, if you give an opinion on social media. So, my guidance is always obviously be very, very careful. And I think we're all getting a bit better at that, I think, with regards to social media, because it's becoming the norm.
Thank you very much. Thank you for that, Val. We move then on to item number 6 on the agenda, which is case review and guidance update on decisions and actions taken nationally.
So we circulated today that should have printed out on the table separately some slides, which is the format that we go through in the committee. Try to do it once a year, although the last update we gave in April, so it's only 6 months since the last update, but a lot happens in 6 months. So for the purposes of the live stream as well, these slides I'll go through, but they will also be uploaded on the website after the meeting. So the Committee on Standards in Public Life, back in January 19, they produced a report, a number of recommendations on the review of the standards framework. The government earlier on this year responded to those recommendations and decided not to take any of them on board at this current time. So as a result of the government's response, the chair now of the Committee on Standards in Public Life has written back to the government, and when he wrote back to the Levelling Up Secretary, who was at the time Simon Clarke, and overnight that is no longer Simon Clarke, it's I think Michael Gove, I think, if I'm up to date this morning. So they, the chair of that committee said that they were very disappointed that the careful recommendations that they had presented had not been accepted. In the letter as well that went to the government, they said that they felt that they had the sector's backing, so that's local government's backing, for those changes that were being proposed. And it was a shame that they were not going through. One of the things that is the most, I think, frustrating for local government, and this is nationally, I'm not talking at local level, but nationally, is that the sanctions are very, very limited. They were changed back in 2011. And the review recommendations had asked for those sanctions to be strengthened. This council did a consultation response at the time and asked for the sanctions to be strengthened. Number of bodies lobbied, but they've not been taken on board. And I only say that just to sort of put that into context for the next few slides, actually, on things that are happening nationally, and also so you can see that the Welsh arrangements are different to England as well. So just sort of bear that in mind. So we'll watch this space and see if the current Levelling Up Secretary responds again. It's becoming a bit of a ping pong, but yeah, until the government decide to change the legislation, we are with the current regime for the foreseeable. Yeah. So there has been nationally over the last year or so a number of councils where there's had to be interventions, government where they appoint a commissioner to go in and assist those councils, and a organisation called Grant Thornton, they have produced an update report, And I will actually get this sent round to members of the committee and independent persons, because I think it's sort of worth looking at the report. I've highlighted some of the themes, but I think it's really interesting that when there are breakdowns in an organisation to the point where somebody has to come in and do troubleshooting, you'll see that some of the themes often relate to council cultures, which is poor behaviours and lack of transparency, and weakness in governance, and that's poor quality review and decision making. So, independent reviews have been undertaken in those authorities, which are big authorities, and there's reoccurring themes in them, and that's, I think, important to take into account. So some of the themes are on the slides. They found that there were failures to address and resolve relationships where there's difficulties between officers, senior officers and members, and if they're not tackled, they get worse. Normally happens. There can be intimidating cultures of secrecy, sometimes overuse of confidential or delegated reports, which reduces openness in trust in leadership and corporate culture. They found in these councils that there was limited understanding of declarations of interest, gifts and hospitality registers not being monitored. And I think on that one, this council receives an annual report, declarations of interest and gifts and hospitality. And these are also things that we are looking at, sort of making sure when we do our member induction programme following the elections, that we really sort of pick on some of these themes as to why they're important, members and officers working together for the benefit of the district. So these reports also found that there was a lack of appreciation of the Nolan principles, and the members of the Code of Conduct, lack of understanding of how complaints were dealt with, failure to adequately support whistleblowers when they do come forward, and if a council is not open, also suggests that a council is not open to challenge, and in their report there were a number of recommendations suggested in relation to culture and governance, and that's why I think it's important for me to circulate the report to you as a committee, just to see what those recommendations are, and as an organisation, we're on track with those, and where we do come across things where we need to improve, that we do, and we don't shy away from it. So that was a report that was published in September. But also, as well, what's been going on in our local government world is that a civility and respect pledge has been launched by for town and parish councils. It is being promoted, I think, by NALC, which is the National Association for Local Councils, and it is their organisations that have wanted this pledge, and they've said, and the text is theirs, that there were growing concerns about the impact of bullying, harassment and intimidation on local councils, councillors, clerks and council staff, the effectiveness of local councils. So by signing the pledge, the relevant council agrees that council will then treat councillors, clerks, employees, members of the public and representatives of partner organisations and volunteers with civility and respect in their role. And also in their pledge, they have suggested a package of actions. The actions basically sort of related to regular training, making sure members and the clerk understood their roles as well, so there's no overlapping of roles. I think it's quite fair to say that if you go to sort of any seminar that talks about governance for town and parish councils, one of the reoccurring themes will be whether councillors end up taking on the clerk. If the clerk's not strong enough, then the councillors take on the role. So there's a package of things there.
When will this be rolled out to parish councils?
It's a pledge that's being launched now. And again, we can send information out. So it's already out there as a pledge. So not being a clerk, I don't know if clerks have sort of been by this by NALC. Sure.
Being a clerk, there are a number of communications come out from NALCI, a couple each week. So I can't recall if I've seen it, but it must have been mentioned. I would have thought about it now.
Yep, I can send information round to the town and parish councils because, as I say, by signing up to the pledge, obviously then the council's recognising that they want to live by this civility and respect. So the other thing I thought I would mention as well is that we obviously had the sad passing of Our Majesty the Queen, and I thought I would just mention how that had an impact on governance within the councils. And there was national mourning guidance which was issued following the death of the Queen. And within local government, we have legislation which affects districts, counties and town and parish about the sort of how to calculate the days when giving notice for meetings. And there was two different approaches taken across the country, and it was the difference between NALC and also local government association for the district and counties. The confusion came about because we had a period of public mourning which was declared by the Earl Marshal Duke of Norfolk. So we got that shortly, that I think it was the day after we lost the Queen. But when it comes to calculating the days, it's all about bank holidays. And bank holiday is declared by the King at the proclamation. So if any of you watched it or went round and listened to those proclamations being read out, so because the King declared only the day of the funeral as a bank holiday, that was the only day that couldn't be taken into account when calculating days for. Having said that, lots of councils, including tendering, we decided to respect the period of mourning, and we didn't hold any meetings during that period. But that was a sort of, local choice, and was also followed sort of quite nationally on that. But I just thought I'd sort of put in that even, such a sad event meant that there was disagreements on governance procedures between different organisations. So now we've just got three cases which relate to actual members, and this goes back to looking at the difference between size for England and Wales. So there is a district councillor who has had a code of conduct complaint against him assessed by his district council, and he is found to have breached the code of conduct over his posts on Twitter and his blog. And he's issued what's called a pre-action protocol letter against his council, which means he's considering applying for judicial review against his council for the decision that they've made about him. Remember when I was talking about the monitoring officer protocol, I said there's no right of appeal. You go to the ombudsman if you're unhappy. So because it's a decision made by the council, it can be judicially reviewed. So this district councillor is deciding to take that action at the moment. Goes also back to the use of social media. And he says that he was making those comments in a personal capacity, and the district council have obviously found the alternative. So it'll be interesting to see where that one goes, and if he does go to the High Court to apply for judicial review. So that one's worth keeping an eye on. And then in Wales, they've had. So, as I said, the procedure is different there. They have an ombudsman that does the investigations, and then they go to the tribunal, and then the tribunal can make decisions, and they've still got the power to disqualify members. So, 2 examples over the last 6 months that I found. One was to have breached the code on 5 separate incidents, concerning false accusations and posting misinformation online. That information that they were posting and sharing related to fellow councillors. That was false, and the tribunal found that there was absolutely no basis for the statements, that they were willfully misinforming people and also discredited colleagues in a harmful way. And they were then disqualified for holding office for 3 years for doing that. So that's the sort of public reputation there being sort of turned in favour of the councillors that were had those false statements being made about them. Then there was another example of where a Welsh councillor had been dishonest when they applied to be a councillor and said that they were eligible to stand for election, even though they had a criminal record. So they shouldn't have been able to be elected. And the ombudsman then looked into it, and the tribunal. And the ombudsman's report alleged that the former councillor, and by then they were a former councillor because they resigned once a national newspaper had published information about their their criminal conviction. By that time, they'd been a councillor for 2 years. So they did resign, and the tribunal found that because the councillor had been dishonest when he signed the Declaration of Acceptance of Office, and during the time he'd acted as a councillor, that was a serious abuse of office. So they then disqualified him for a further 2 years being able to hold office. So in addition to what relation to his criminal record. So they was just to sort of show you the difference between the Welsh system and the English system. So that's what I've found of interest for you over the last 6 months.
Thanks, Lisa. Is there any questions on any of those cases? Anyone relate to them?
You're not in Wales.
Thank you. So I think that leads us on to item number 7. Quarterly complaints update and other general matters.
So again, the usual format that you've received. So I give you updates, existing cases from the last update, and then I tell you about any new matters that have been received. We had a long ongoing matter town council, and that had been subject to informal resolution over quite a period of time. As we said in the update last time, it was the informal resolution actually resulted in a governance review, and the Town Council had engaged positively working at those arrangements going forward. There was, last time I gave you the update, there was one last thing that was outstanding, but that has now been actioned, therefore the matter concluded. It will now go in November, as well as the recommendation which was relating to extending the term of office of independent persons. That will also go in. And as Ian's just whispered in my ear, and now the monitoring officer protocol as well, which I should be able to say, shouldn't I? But I can't. And since April, we've had no requests for dispensations.
No, does that include parish the district ones? Does that include parish council?
Yes, Councillor Gugami. If so, down the first column, what I do is I just sort of say which type of council the complaints relate to. But as you can see, for the first one, that did relate to a town council. So if I'd have had complaints relating to town councillors, yeah, they would be included. So that's just how I describe them. So yeah, right. So it includes town, parish, and district, and all. But at the moment, there's been a bit of focus on the district.
Thanks, Lisa. I'm assuming item number 8 is a replica of 7. Is that? Would I be right in saying that? No problem. Thank you. Right, that draws our meeting to a conclusion. I'd like to thank you all for coming, and I believe the next scheduled meeting for this committee will be on the 1st of February at 10 a.m. here once again at Station Road, Clacton. So thanks very much indeed for coming and hang about if you can. Thank you.